You're listening to the Remote Millionaires Podcast, the show for aspiring and established entrepreneurs who want to create and scale six-figure success online without being chained to a job, location, or computer. I'm your host, Tom Gaddis. Let's dive in. Aloha and welcome to the Remote Millionaires Podcast. Adam Lyons, how's it going, man?
Going great. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, excited to have you here. We were just joking before we started this recording about how it seems like we were just on a Zoom not too long ago because I was on Adam's podcast and now here he is to visit you guys.
You were dropping awesome bombs, man. We appreciate it.
No, I had a lot of fun and I was really looking forward to this episode too and talking to you because I know we have some kind of mutual acquaintances in the industry. That's how we got associated, but maybe you could start off just by telling Remote Millionaires listeners a little bit about yourself, maybe for those people that don't know who you are, what you do, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Adam Lyons. In the last 3 years, I've helped about 1,900 companies either grow or scale, or with mergers and acquisitions. I specialize in something that we developed called the Smart Blueprint, which is a system of SOPs that we give to companies normally after I acquire them, because that's my background is nowadays I'm more of an investor than anything. And I love applying this Smart Blueprint because we know it just, increases the value of a company. But over the last few years, we found people, want to get that from us and use it as well, which is totally okay. And so we do that. The key method that we use inside Smart is what we call custom insight reports, which is a detailed analysis of your best customers. And then once we identify who your best customers are, and more importantly, their behaviors, where they hang out, drivers, frustrations, all that kind of stuff, we can give you a set down of simple offers that you can test. And they, almost always 10x your revenue. So it's pretty good stuff.
Man, that sounds awesome. I'm actually excited to dive into that because you touched on a few things there that I know Remote Millionaire listeners are going to love. Number one, you mentioned SOPs. Standard operating procedures are something we harp on all the time. We have them, we implement them, we swear by them. We're like, how did we operate without them? And then you also talked about identifying your perfect customers and stuff like that. And I want to dig into those two specific things for a minute. But before that, I want to take one step back and ask you, what did you do before mergers and acquisitions, it sounds all fancy, right? But what did you do before that?
Before that, actually, it's a pretty standard route into the world of M&A. See, I was a janitor. And
makes total sense.
And my dad was a janitor. My granddad was a chef on a ship and a cleaner. So it's kind of like, looking after the house is kind of like our thing. And I know I was built differently, I suppose. I just remember sitting at a desk and instead of, just twiddling my thumbs and watching sports, I would read and learn stuff. And, after a while I started, I got known as being a bit of an expert in different things and built some businesses around them, became a bit of a serial entrepreneur. And then I realized that there was one key component that all the businesses needed if they were going to be successful. And that was really good standard operating procedures around marketing, audience collection, revenue, sales, scripts, et cetera, et cetera. And I sort of doubled down on that. Once I got really good at that, I found a business mentor, a guy by the name of Roland Frazier, and realized that I just wanted to be right next to that guy in everything that he ever did. And in doing so, he taught me mergers and acquisitions. And then I realized that all these standard operating procedures I developed were really useful because I would acquire a business, slap the standard operating procedures into it, and then grow the business. So, fast forward to today, I currently own 16 businesses of my own. And like I said, I've consulted or helped with negotiations of 1,900 others in the last 3 years. So I'm a little bit busy, but I love it.
Man, that's great. I love that you mentioned that you were just a little different because I was just telling somebody that the other day and it almost felt weird saying it. Like I'm originally from Oklahoma. And so all my friends there, they used to like to go out on the weekends, wear cowboy hats and boots, drink beer, get in fights. And I was like, I wanted nothing to do with that. And I felt kind of out of place back then. But now I see was really good that I was a little different because I feel like I'm in a good place today. And man, that's a great story. So I want to ask you a couple of things about owning 16 businesses, because a lot of people that listen to this podcast, they're just trying to get their first business off the ground, right? Their first business. And here you're like, look, I got 16 businesses. I'm helping all these other businesses. How do you, first of all, how do you structure things in a way that gives you the time to do that? How do you structure things in a way that frees up that time?
No, man, I love that you asked it. So without getting too much into it, so the SMART blueprint, SMART, they're the five basic departments that we believe a company needs specifically to focus on cash flow and revenue and making money. There are other SOPs you need. We don't cover those. We just cover the money-making ones. So S is staff, M marketing, A audience, R revenue, and T is testimonials. So the first section, staff, the reason I can run 16 companies is because everything about staff management, time management, et cetera, is all in those SOPs. So I only touch things that are high leverage. So if I'm doing something, it's because there's no one else in the company that can do it. But likewise, I never get in anyone else's lane. Now, when you first start a company, if somebody listens to this and you're a beginner, you can't obviously outsource it to staff members because you don't have them. So it starts by being really deliberate about your day. So it's funny. In SMART, we have a calendar, and it breaks down every day of the week, 6 days out of the 7. We tell everyone, take one day off or you'll go crazy. But the other 6, we design a calendar that assumes they have a 9-to-5 job. And because a lot of people, they start their business while they've got a day job. And so we give them a calendar like that. But we also tell them, look, if you're a new entrepreneur, that day job might be where you do the other stuff that isn't the system stuff around building the business. But still, we find that in about 24 hours of work a week, you can start a business effectively and do all the bits you need.
I'm sorry. That's really interesting that you say that, because we do get a lot of people in room owners that have full-time jobs as well, right? They're looking to break out of that and get that. And one of the things that we're always harping on is that idea, like you have to focus on the things that really matter in the beginning and kind of forget, like scaling, outsourcing, all that stuff is awesome. We want to do it. But in the beginning, we need some cash flow, right? We need some moolah to make that stuff happen.
Yeah, and that's the key. And so we've found that a 74-hour week is heavy. 64-hour week is heavy. But it's a 40-hour job with 24 hours running your own business. However, it only takes 6 months or so before you've got a little bit of money coming in. Not enough to quit the job, but enough that you can realize that, all right, this could work. And then, within a year, realistically, if you're doing everything correctly, it should be feasible for you to at least downgrade the job or ease back a little bit. I don't know if I'd quit entirely at that point, but yeah, you're right. But it's all about making sure you do those processes. So we define there are 6 key departments which represent the 6 C-suite members in a company. So you've got the the operations, sales, marketing, technology, finance, and then of course the executive officer, which is typically you. If it's a company of 1, you're all 6. And so we try and get people to divide them up. An easy way of imagining it would be like, okay, on this day, I'm in sales mode. On this day, I'm in marketing mode. But it doesn't work that way because you kind of need to do sales every day. You don't need to do technology every day. And so we give them a calendar. And we're like, look, this is a good day to do technology. This is a good time of day to do sales. Like if you're running your own company and you're busy during the day, you should do sales just after work because that's when people get home and they're available. Try and do sales at 3 p.m. and no one's available, you're not going to make any sales. So we just get practical about that. And so that's the key. So at this point, though, where I am, where I've got 16 companies, it's all about streamlining it. So I've got my board meetings that are scheduled out once a quarter. And we try and get those at the same location. And I'll even group businesses together. So if they're in the same industry, I do the board meeting at the same time with all of them. So you'll see 2 or 3 of my teams across the different companies, but they're in the same industry, so they're in the same room for the board meeting. Because I'm going to say the same thing, in our analysis of this market, this is what's going on. And it doesn't matter. I own a convention center, or not a convention center, but an event at a convention center, a convention. I'm like, the data for the convention is important as it is for my physical brick and mortar location that does the same thing.
Gotcha. So chunking those tasks together, doing similar things together, like huge things to get more done in less time, basically.
Yeah. You want to upset me, get me to repeat something. That's like, go crazy. And
I missed that. Could you say that again?
Yeah, I'm just kidding. If I had to repeat something 16 times across all businesses, I'd go nuts.
You'd go crazy.
Yeah. So it's bad enough to do it the first time. But it's not a problem as long as you're streamlined. And I've just got very efficient with my time. And it's funny. My whole family has been lazy their whole life. And I think that's why we're janitors. And I've realized that laziness is a superpower. my laziness makes me efficient because I would not waste energy. I'm just now a hyper productive lazy person.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, I want to dig in a little bit because you were talking about, kind of identifying the ideal buyer, that type of thing. And I think a lot of people listening to the podcast can get a lot out of that. Because like I said, a lot of them are either just starting their journey of building their first agency business, or, they've had a few clients, but they really struggle with the consistency, the ups and downs. So any maybe tips, thoughts you could give them on how to kind of get past that and work through those things?
Yeah, I mean, like, first of all, if you're an agency, you really want to do stuff nobody else is doing. I know a lot of agencies that they'll run Facebook ads or what have you, but it's kind of going uphill. And even if you are good at Facebook ads or YouTube ads or whatever, it's difficult. Here's what I would do: I would pay to sponsor an event in your niche, specifically in a very specific subsection. So let's use, for example, I live just outside of Austin, Texas, or you live in Oklahoma. Here we go. So in Oklahoma, there will absolutely be a chapter of something called the Entrepreneurs Organization. There will also be a chapter of something called Vistage. Vistage, the Entrepreneurs Organization, both of these are companies that do 7 figures or more. Vistage is more like 10 million. Entrepreneurs Organization is like 1 million. But they're companies where the owner of the company is applied to learn how to run their company correctly. If I had to choose in different companies in an area that we're going to survive, I would argue that EO and Vistage companies are going to do better overall. The reason I'm saying this is there will be chapters of those in Oklahoma. Now, those chapters will run events. You can contact them and you can ask about the event, and I would sponsor the event. Now, the sponsorship is not going to cost a lot of money. Well, I say not a lot. It's going to be like $5,000. If you're an employee, that's going to sound like a lot of money. If you're a business owner, that's not a lot of money. You'll waste more on ads in a month. Even if I could go back in time and talk to myself when I started my business, I would have said to myself, find the $5,000, even if you have to split the money you make off the back of it with somebody, right? Be like, look, give me the 5 so I can go to the event, and the first 7K in sales I'll give you, and I'll take it. Something like that would be the deal I would come up with. And then I would go to the event, and at the event, I'd be trying to sell my services, but not heavily. What I'd really be trying to do is get the contact information of everyone that attended. So the last time I went to an EO event that was a chapter event in a city, I was in Shanghai, and there were, I think, 52 members that turned up. So I would collect the phone number and email and information of everyone at the event, and in return, give them some kind of free advert I'd create for them, or a free campaign, whatever, some kind of freebie. Once I've collected these emails, I can now create an ad and target those people as a customer, as a custom list. So now I may not be able to run ads to everybody on the bloody internet, but I can absolutely run ads to 52 people and make sure that they only see my freaking face. And now they're going to think I must be the best at advertising because they only ever see my ads everywhere. Meanwhile, I'm only spending $300 a month to make sure that these 52 people think I'm the most important person on the planet. A combination of my free consultation with them where I build the campaign, combined with ads that retarget those people probably every single week with a new advert, realistically. After a few months of them seeing my face with a new ad every single week, completely different. It's very important that it changes. They say, this guy is amazing. He does new ads every week. He's on top of everything. He's everywhere at once. I'm going to have to hire this guy, and you get your money back. The cool thing about it is I probably only have to go to one event, and I've been exposed to like 50 plus businesses. And now from those 50 businesses, plus of course, networking and anything else I do in between, I've got everything I need to, have a small agency, maybe making 10, 15 grand a month. But from there, I go to another convention and do the same thing again.
Man, that is a great blueprint. If you're listening to this episode, you need to rewind with the pen and paper and write that whole strategy down. I was just sitting here thinking like, I could implement that with like in a few weeks. Like that would be, that was great. That was awesome.
Thank you. And we can go a step further because like there are trade events. You don't like the one I'm suggesting is just generic to make sure it hits as many people as the podcast. The official blueprint would have you identify your perfect criteria. So if you were after, say, dentists, That's even easier because the dentists won't be as organized. And sponsoring their event is going to be more like $1,000 realistically. They might even let you turn up if you just pay for the alcohol and you turn up with a whole bunch of bottles. Like seriously, these events, it's shocking how cheap you can get into them. And the more specific you are, like if you target physiotherapists, it's going to be even cheaper because it's a subset, or if you specifically target cosmetic surgeons, so just really think about like what your niche is that you're going to be. And there will be a convention or a trade event or something for them. You sponsor that event and it will hurt the first time. I just want to be very, very clear it will. And I always tell people the smart blueprint gets you rich slowly. It's not like a get rich quick thing. It's a very, so I'm like, no, it'll take like 3 months of you running ads before you realistically get sales. But when the money comes in, you'll suddenly be looking at a pretty sizable chunk. And if you're making 150, 180 grand in year one, year two, you should be able to do $500,000 or more. Year three, you're a 7-figure business if you're doing everything correctly. Year 4, 5, I mean, you're already a millionaire.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I have two questions for before we wrap up. Number one is there anything that I should have asked you, but I didn't? So let's start with that.
Yeah, it's a good question. Probably a zillion things. I think one of the biggest is upsells. So the way that I add value to a company is we go in, we run a customer insight report, and then we tell people what 2 or 3 other upsells they should be selling. Most agencies, they sell agency and that's it. But your customers have need beyond that. They need websites, they need copywriting, they need product delivery, they need canvassing, they need all sorts of stuff. If you know all the things they could ever need and you have a directory, you can say to them, what else do you need? I'll refer you to someone. You don't have to do the service yourself, you just refer them and get yourself a back-end affiliate fee for introductions. Suddenly, they rely on you for everything to do with their business, from fractional accounting services, QuickBooks. I mean, every single piece of software they could ever want. And you've got an affiliate link to everything. And now you make money off of everything they ever do. And that is something that I don't know a single agency that does it unless they've hired us.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Another good nugget there. I hope you guys wrote it down if you're listening. My final question is, where can people go to find out more about you and what you're doing?
I thought long and hard about it, and I figured that for you, Tom, I'm just going to give my cell phone. And I know people don't normally do this. But if you're listening to this and you want me to have a look at your website, or you want to text me, my phone number is +1 512, because I live in Austin, 957-3141. That's 512-957-3141. When you text me, you'll get to see a little bit of our blueprint. You're going to get an automated text reply back that just confirms you're cool with texting me. And then you'll end up with a little bit of a free gift. After the first 3 text messages, it isn't a robot anymore, and it is me. The reason we automate it is for data collection. Most people aren't doing this correctly, but you need confirmation before you text people. Once you've gone through that, it is me, though. If you ignore me, I'm going to get sad. So if you do text me, make sure you actually text, because otherwise I'm like, they don't like me anymore. But that's my real phone number. And, just like I was just mentioning, I'm always happy to point somebody into the direction of resources, because typically I've got an affiliate thing on it. So if you're like, hey, I really want this service, like if you want a lawyer, I'll be like, yeah, I got you. And lawyers can't give kickbacks, but they buy me dinner instead. So there's I'll direct you where you need to go. You tell me what you need, I got you.
That's great. That's great. Well, Adam, man, listen, it was a real pleasure having you on the podcast. So much good stuff. I know listeners are going to love it. And I hope if you're listening to this, you'll actually go and implement some of the things that Adam covered, because not only are they out of the box of what most people typically do, but they can actually get you real results and get you on the right track. So Adam, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks ever so much for having me, man. And then, I don't think we're on social media yet. What's your social media? I'm going to add you.
You just look me up, just Tom Gaddis.
All right, perfect. Yeah. And I'm at the Adam Lyons on pretty much everywhere. So if you need me, you can
okay. Yeah, I'll find you on there too. And hey, look, if you're listening to this episode and you enjoyed it, we'd really appreciate you heading to wherever you listen to this podcast. Leave us a review. We'd appreciate that. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Remote Millionaires Podcast. And I'll see you on the next episode. Until then, stay safe and practice aloha. Hey, if what you've heard today on the Remote Millionaires podcast resonates with you and you want to continue the conversation, then I want to personally invite you to head over to remotemillionaires.com and schedule your free Remote Millionaires business development call. We will analyze your business and show you exactly how to accelerate your results and build a wildly successful business you can run from anywhere. Until next time, Tom Gaddis signing off.